The thing is, Amos is a nobody. That's what Amaziah, the high priest in the northern kingdom of Israel, must be thinking. Amaziah must notice in today's reading that Amos himself admits that he's no prophet, meaning no professional prophet with a temple of his own to give him a platform. Instead, he's a herdsman and a fig tree farmer, or dresser of sycamore trees, as the Bible puts it. Even more importantly, he's not from around here. Here being that northern kingdom of Israel. He's just this ordinary Joe road tripping up from his little farm in Judah in the southern kingdom, seeing how things are done around here and getting really judgy really fast. No wonder Amaziah doesn't like what Amos says. Amaziah is the high priest at the main temple in Israel. Amaziah has worked hard to get where he is, to pull down the salary he makes, to build up his Twitter following and become an influencer. How dare this southern country boy come waltzing into Amaziah's turf and start talking about how mad God is because rich people in Israel treat the poor people badly. I mean, okay, there's some truth to that. Maybe the rich are using debt to deprive the rural poor of what little land and wealth they have, and maybe that is technically breaking God's covenant. That doesn't give Amos the right to saunter up here where he's never been before and start airing other people's dirty laundry. Talking about how the wealthy sell the righteous for silver and trample the head of the poor into the dust of the earth, and acting like he's speaking for God. Go back to your country, Amos. Go speak for God there. Go be a justice warrior in Judah if you're so righteous and fearless. And so, Amaziah doesn't listen to Amos. And neither does Jeroboam, the king of Israel under whom Amaziah works. They fail to welcome this outsider or to heed his warning that God is angry at their iniquity and will cause the Assyrian Empire to defeat and exile Israel to an unclean land, which is, of course, exactly what happens in another 30 years or so, give or take. You know, our faith tradition places this strong ethic on hospitality, on welcoming the stranger and treating her justly. For you were once strangers in the land of Egypt, God tells the Israelites multiple times. And usually we think of this as an altruistic value, or at least a value that makes us more moral, done for the sake of our morality and other people's well-being. But today's passage from Amos reminds us of another truth. We need the stranger among us. We need to welcome new people from other backgrounds because they have a fresh perspective on what may have come to seem normal to us. They can see and name things that we are too comfortable, too culturally embedded to face ourselves. Things that we need to be told. I think of the movie Spotlight that came out some years back. I don't know if any of you saw it. It's about this team of reporters at the Boston Globe and how they broke the story of the Catholic Church's clergy sex abuse scandal there in the early 2000s. Incredible movie if you haven't seen it. And boy, does it make the case for why we need strong, well-funded, professional news organizations in this country. I mean, these journalists spent several years combing through records and cultivating sources in order to discover what a more shallow investigation likely would not have. That this was not a case of a few bad apple priests getting passed around the diocese and protected by higher ups. It was 90 priests in the Boston area alone. Hundreds of victims, a massive cover-up. And yet at one point, as the reporters discover the scope of the abuse, one of them admits that he'd actually been given the names of 20 of these abusive priests almost a decade before. He buried the news in a small article in the middle of the paper and never followed up on it. Why? What has prevented these local professional reporters from holding their own archdiocese accountable? Well, as someone in the movie remarks, Boston is really a small town in many ways. So many of its citizens are Catholic and have connections with parishes and priests and bishops and lawyers and lay people in the Catholic hierarchy that it's very hard for anyone to truly rock the boat. And the reporters are no exception. They've grown up in the church and seen the good work that it does. They're friends with people who are implicated in the deception, people who are Little League coaches, board members of charities, hosts of dinner parties, who have charm and good senses of humor, who do generous things. Can you imagine how hard it would be to start investigating folks you are connected to socially? Can you imagine how it would rip you up inside to realize that they have helped to conceal terrible, terrible crimes against innocent kids in your community? And how about facing the fact that you yourself have participated in this don't ask, don't tell culture by burying stories in the middle of the paper and not following up? And here's the point. What was it that finally pushed these Globe reporters to really go after the story? A new Jewish editor from the Miami Herald, a stranger who's not from around here, a prophet most decidedly not in his own hometown, an outsider who comes up from down south, sees how things are done in Boston, and gets really judgy, or at least really curious, really fast. We need the stranger in our midst. We need the outsider to speak the truth to us, as painful or irritating as that might be. And we need to listen for God's prophetic voice where we might least expect to find it, to allow the other to join our community, not to conform to who we are, but to change who we are. We need to have the humility, curiosity, and wisdom, both to welcome the messenger and to heed the message. Amen.